Hello everybody, Brendan here with Team Top Cut. Today's video is going to be about the tech cards for Vanquish Soul, specifically during DUAD format, or for the NAWCQ, or NAWCQs that might be occurring between now and K9 format. So, this is kind of a video that is mostly coming from a place of also a need for personal dissection of the format itself. I have yet to rank these ahead of time, so this isn't something where it's like I know what I'm going to be giving each card the ranking for. It's basically going to be like as I get to it, I'll rank it. Most of the stuff that's in here actually, maybe not most, but a good chunk of this is actually stuff that's suggestion from the community. So I asked the Vanquish Soul Discord and the Vanquish Soul Facebook group. I was basically saying like, hey, you know, what cards or engines would you like to see me include in this so that we could consider that and discuss it, have a dialogue about it. So yeah, I just want to go ahead and get started into here. Maybe I'll end up coming away with this with some more ideas for what I should be playing in my deck for the NAWCQ, because spoiler alert, I do plan on playing Vanquish Soul. Okay, so the Charmies, right? This is an interesting one. For those of you that watch our stream over on Twitch, I actually had a very long talk regarding all three of the Charmies and then ranking those basically on whether or not they should be main decked, side decked, or can be main decked. And I think the conclusion that I came to is ultimately that all three of them are under can be main decked, but I had them in this order. And I have them in this order for a couple of reasons. One, FUA, obvious reason, you know, if you lose a die roll, you go second, it's going to be the highest impact. So, you know, you'd like for that to be in there just as like a safety net. Meowls as the second most can be main decked for a couple of reasons. One is obviously if you top deck it going second, it's still live. So even if you lose the die roll and you top deck it, or if you're going first and it's in your opening hand, you know, at least it's an earth. But going second, if you top deck it, a lot of the decks that we're playing against right now actually have moments during your turn where they will be summoning from grave or banishment. Look at Malice, look at Mitsurugi as two prime examples of this, right? Blue Eyes is another example of this, where, you know, it might not be a lot of summons, it might be one or two, but those are one or two draws that, you know, can help you break an established board or play through an established board. And it's also possible that, you know, that top deck of the Meowls going second makes a little bit of a difference. I also like it more than Perulia because I think that you're almost guaranteed to get value out of Meowls this format. This is obviously going to change pretty dramatically come Justice Hunters format. Perulia is probably, like Justice Hunters, this is probably going to be the case. This is probably going to be the case, honestly. But right now, I actually like Meowls more because let's look at the decks that are popular in this format. You've got Malice, Mitsurugi, Fiendsmith, Bystial, Lunalight. Those are like the big five, right? The big five engines and or decks that we're going to have to be concerned about. And I think that if we take that into account, what decks summon from grave or banishment, right? Malice, Meowls is guaranteed to get you value. Bystial, you could chain it to a node or a Eclipse Twins to at least get one or two draws. So you're almost guaranteed your one or two draws there, right? Mitsurugi, you can chain it to the Ritual Monster's effects to come back. That puts them in position of either giving you a draw or, you know, leaving a Ritual Monster in grave so they don't have the excess body on board, which is fine. Like, I'll take that trade, sure. Orchist, that's another one. They're going to be summoning from grave. Mitsu Orchist is running around, right? Summoning from grave or banishment. That's going to be pretty strong. And you could chain that as well to like the Galatea Eye to come back so you know that you're getting your value there. Or the Symbol Skeleton. What was the other example? So Bystial, chain it to node or Eclipse Twins, blah, blah, blah. Lunalight, you get your value for sure. I mean, they summon from grave a whole bunch. Tiger summons from grave multiple times a turn by itself. So, yeah, I mean, Meowls is going to get you a ton of value there. So, genuinely. Oh, and then Fiendsmith also summons from grave at least twice. So, there's circumstances where, you know, Meowls is actually guaranteed to get you draws in a way that Perulia might not be. So like Perulia, for example, you don't get many draws out of Fiendsmith, if any, sometimes, right? Lunalight, if they have a good enough hand, they might not need their normal summon as much. And they can make, you know, pretty comfortable board without giving you more than like one, maybe two draws. I think really good into Vanquish Soul, obviously. Mitsu, Ryziel obviously can be very strong into those. So it's, Malice is another one where it's like they might not even need to give you that many draws or any off of the Perulia. And as soon as that Perulia resolves, because you're doing it in draw phase or standby phase, they're going to do whatever they can to not play into it. Whereas Meowls, they're going to have to have committed to a certain play line already. And that means that you're basically guaranteed your draws because you're chaining it to something that will give you a draw rather than shotgunning it early in the attempt or the hopes that you're going to be getting a draw out of it in the future. Okay. Gamma for Vanquish Soul specifically. I think that it genuinely depends on the build. If you're going to main deck it, I don't think it's a should main deck. It's a can main deck. It's probably going to be build dependent. But I do really like Gamma for Vanquish Soul specifically. If you think about the decks and the engines that we're playing and the cards that we play in our deck, Gamma can be very effective. This is a deck that has a lot of room in the extra deck itself. So we're playing cards like Rhoda, Stake Your Soul, Pot of Prosperity, Pot of Extravagance. You could be on the Fiendsmith build and playing Engraver. You could be on the Mitsu build. You're playing Prayers and Habakiri and Saji to search the ritual spell, right? These are a lot of cards that you don't need a monster on board to be activating and are actually really good bait for a lot of hand traps, right? So, if you activate Rhoda and you get drolled, chain Gamma, now I'm going to hand loop you for 2 by summoning Omega and ripping a card out of your hand. And then I'm also now not drolled. Great. Or like Prosperity, activate Prosperity, add Gamma to hand, right? Now they know that they can't droll because I've got the Gamma. And that's awesome because now I can just use all of my searchers immediately and then play into the droll when I want to or when I don't have a choice. And then also big thing, Perulia is very good against this deck, right? That's a draw phase or standby phase card. So that's a card that's going to be used before we have a monster on board, unless we've already done Sue setup. And if we've already done Holy Sue setup on their turn, we don't need the Gamma anyway, or we can make first action genuinely just be, okay, I'm going to link 2 into Lambda, and then I'm going to play, right? So now this Gamma in my hand's not dead. So I think that Gamma is actually really, really, really effective and might even be somewhere up here. I actually think that I might like Gamma more than I like the Charmies in the main, because it's guaranteed to get you value first and second, as long as you play intelligently with it. The biggest downside is that it does involve you playing a brick with it in the driver, so it also doesn't necessarily, it insulates your play, it doesn't necessarily complement your play. So a lot of what you do, Gamma is nice to have. I think I'm gonna do this because Gamma it's always gonna surprise people. If they play into it once, they're probably not gonna play into it for the rest of the match just because they're scared of getting Gamma'd. I really, really, really like Gamma. I think that Vanquish Soul is a deck that has the luxury of playing Gamma because we have so many cards that search, and we have the room in the extra deck for both Omega and Lambda. Delta should side deck. If you are playing Gamma, you should be side decking Delta. This card's really effective for a lot of reasons. One, you can negate the Mitsurugi spell. If you're going second, you Delta the Mitsurugi ritual spell. You can hit the Vanquish Soul field spell in the mirror, so they activate the field spell, you Delta that. That's really bad for them. That can actually really hurt. I mean, obviously, everybody knows that Vanquish Soul's field spell is probably the #1 card to be hitting right now. If they're playing cards and you want to be stopping something or doing one thing to try to stop their setup, it's hit the field spell. This can also hit the Malice field spell or Gold Sark. This can hit Ryziel Cross when they attempt to activate it. So Cross is now no longer there to protect their board on your turn. You can hit the Orcus field spell. You can hit Masquerade for Lunalight. There's a lot of opportunities for Delta to get you some value, but you only want to play this going second. So this card is not nearly worth considering for go first, just because. Also, if you Charmy and they try to call by or cross out, if you try to Charmy or Lancia or Silver Bullet something, they try to call by, boom, there's Delta. Hey, nice. But this should definitely be sided, not mained, just because this is really only good going second, whereas Gamma is good going first or second. So I do like Delta in this side deck. Nibiru, this is also interesting. I'm going to put this in worth a look. Obviously, it's not attributes, kind of like most of the cards up here so far. The thing that I have with Nibiru, it might even be in build dependent. I'm probably going to put it in build dependent, actually, because I think that Nibiru is worth main decking under certain circumstances, and those certain circumstances are, it depends on how much deep draw you're playing. So like if you're main decking a whole lot of Charmies, what are you going to be drawing into that matters? This is an example where it's like, okay, well, I can load up on Charmies and I can say, okay, well, I just drew a bunch of Charmies, go first. Here, I'll just pass and then use my Charmies to draw cards. Well, what am I drawing into? Cards like Nib, cards like Holy Sue, cards like, you know, Gamma. These are things that you'd want, or Bystials. These are things that you'd want to be drawing into. And so I think build dependent, because you could play this depending on how many Charmies you're playing and if you're playing Rescue Ace Impulse, right? I'm also going to throw Impulse in here. I think that Impulse might even be somewhere here. I really like Rescue Ace Impulse and Fire Attacker. Now, this is one thing that the Vanquish Soul Discord server is almost like completely divided on. Maybe not completely divided, or it's like, you know, there's a small group of us championing for it. Maybe even I'm just the only one, but I really like this engine in Vanquish Soul. I'm not going to commit to saying that you should main deck it. I don't think that it's a mandatory must main deck type deal. Unlike, you know, Ash Blossom, for example, which we'll just throw that up there, should be main decking that card. But I do think that it has a lot of synergy with Vanquish Soul itself. Obviously, it's fires in hand. Obviously, you could search the Impulse off of Rhoda if you already have Rosin in hand. It can be nice to have in hand for Droll and Lock Bird moments where, you know, you get Droll and Lock Birded. Okay, now I've got the follow-up here where on their turn I can Impulse, summon Fire Attacker, draw 2, discard 1. Hey, great, I drew into my Holy Sue, now I get to play. I think that, you know, non-engine for Vanquish Soul right now needs to be one of 3 things: attribute friendly, deep draw to help you get into Sue plus appropriate attributes, or turn skips like Silver Bullets. And so cards like Impulse fits 2 of those criteria, where it's one of those things where it's like, okay, this doubles up as both a fire and a deep draw card. Oh, whoops. And then lastly, it does have a main phase effect on field, where if you're playing against like Lunalight, for example, and you've hand trapped them to the point where they only have their towers on board, you can normal summon Impulse and use its effect, and now they can't use their towers to board nuke you, because it affects the player, not the monster itself. So just some versatility there that I really like. I like it more than Gamma just because I think that, you know, attribute friendly is nice. It complements the playstyle of the deck a lot more. I think Gamma's comparable to something like Called By, where we should be playing Called By because of how deadly Droll is to us and, you know, a lot of the decks that can play into it. But I don't necessarily think it's similar or comparable to these cards above it here. Droll. This is another thing where it's like, should you be main decking it? Can you main deck? I'm going to put this probably above the Charmy. I'll probably put this here, actually. Maybe here, where Droll is obviously very strong into the format. There's a lot of decks that lose to Droll, ourselves included. Even Malice can be sort of weakened by Droll a little bit. So there's justification to be main decking this card because of what we were talking about, which is like, okay, non-engine needs to be a turn skip, it needs to be attribute friendly, or it needs to be deep draw to complement like Sue, plus attributes. But I mean, Droll is a turn skip, and Droll can save your life, go first and go second. Like if you go first and it's in your hand, great. This is going to help protect me against them just going full combo. So like if I get Drolled, I'll just Droll them right back. Or, you know, if you're going second, this will help keep board states simpler so that it's easier for you to play the game. The reason why I'm not personally in love with Droll and Lock Bird is because in an ideal world, you're playing cards that are going to be going plus on the opponent's turn. Like right now, I'm actually side decking Droll and Lock Bird. That might change. You know, I have locals tonight, so I might try to main deck it instead of the Rescue Ace engine here and see how that feels. But big thing for me is that, you know, I'm going to be going plus a lot on their turn, and some of that means that I'm going to be going plus in their main phase or in response to certain things. So I'm not just going to be shotgunning cards, right? I'm going to wait for the appropriate time to use interaction, and sometimes that means that I'm outside of a Droll window where I could have Drolled them before, and then I didn't. So Droll can be really hit or miss. There are hands where like the Droll feels bad because you're just going to be searching 3 or 4 times on their turn, or like searching and drawing. And so, yeah, you know, I might be able to give them a search or 2 and then do all my stuff and then droll them. But it's like, typically if you're doing that much setup, you're probably fine anyway. I don't know. And it's not an attribute. I like Droll. I don't love Droll. I think that it's justifiably main deckable because of its strength into a lot of decks. But like with Mitsurugi playing Orchest now, you know, they're a little bit more Droll insolent. You know, Malice is pretty insolent. Fiendsmith can be insolent. You know, this isn't a mandatory, you must be main decking Droll. I think that this is a, you know, you can main deck it because of how good it is into the format, but it's not required. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I love this game. And that's another thing. If you guys watch the player prep series that I have for Vanquish Soul, the very first one, I actually talk about how deck building is not a high priority with this deck. Like, deck building doesn't necessarily matter all that much with Vanquish Soul. Like, ratios don't matter all that much. Tech cards don't matter all that much. What matters is that you have appropriate non-engine for the format itself. And, you know, you obviously want to be able to draw your attributes. So it's one of those things where it's like, you know, a lot of these are going to be in can main deck. Very few are going to be in should main deck, just because there's a lot of flexibility with Vanquish Soul itself. Ghost Reaper, not even worth considering. This card is super bait. This card has never been good. And the only time that I could ever think of it being relevant is like tier 0 formats where everybody's just playing the same deck and there's just one extra deck monster that has to get hit. Yeah, I get it's a dark. Yeah. Oh, I can snipe detonator. Ho, ho, ho. Never enough. Decks are doing too much right now for... That's basically what it is. Decks are doing too much right now for Ghost Reaper to do anything positive for the game itself, or for your deck. Shifter, build dependent. This is a should side deck. This is also a can main deck. I'm gonna put build dependent. It's gonna be above Nib though, just because, you know, if you're playing the Mitsurugi build or the Fiendsmith build, you're probably not going to want to be on Shifter just because of how it actively hurts your own deck and your own game plan. And we'll kind of get down to the different options down here for builds, but I think Shifter is build dependent. But if you are playing a build that can play it, it should be in a should main deck or can main deck or should side deck. Yeah, build dependent's an interesting one because it isn't necessarily a yes or no like some of these things are. It's basically a, it depends on the build, you know. DD Crow, this is a can main deck option as well. I'm going to put this below Gamma because I like DD Crow. I do not love DD Crow. I think that it's really good at what it does, right? So you're playing against Mitsurugi, you can hit the ritual spell out of Grave. If you're playing against Malice, you can snipe whatever they'd be summoning off of, like Splash Mage, if they're in a simplified combo state. But a lot of the time, you know, that might be a Malice monster who hasn't used its banishment effect. So what are you really getting out of it? It's good into Lunalight. It's good into Orchest. It's not that good into Ryziel. It's like okay into Ryziel, I guess. Sort of. It's not good into the Mirror. I don't know, but it's like okay into Fiendsmith. Again, I think I like this card. I don't love this card. I think if you're just really looking for hand traps to put in, this is definitely something that deserves a spot or can have a spot. Like if you just have room in your deck, you can play this card. Should it be side decked? Maybe. But this is definitely main deckable, and I don't think you're wrong if you're main decking this card. I personally would rather play everything else in front of this before I play DD Crow. But it's also possible that like DD Crow is here and it's just like better than the Rescue Ace engine. I personally don't think so. So again, this is a personal ranking system. Everything that's above the DD Crow is things that I think I would rather play than the DD Crow in the main deck. But like genuinely, it's a good card. It's a dark. It has good matchups into the format. Why not? You know, Saronir, not even worth considering. So this is going to be interesting. The Bystials here. I think that Magnum Hut is a should main deck. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is if you're playing other Bystials, this card is really nice for obvious reasons. If you're not playing other Bystials, this card still lets you search Caesar, so it still gets you an Earth. It gets you a dragon. right? And if Caesar's in the graveyard, like if you use this card and then Caesar's engraved, like you linked it off or something happened to it, you can still add it to hand during the end phase because mag adds from deck or graveyard. So this actually lets you be a little bit more radical with the Caesar Valius in your deck. If you currently have both in hand, which I kind of like you can use the Caesar Valius without much consequence. You could like sack it off for Vanquish Soul Rocks or something after a battle phase, because you're still going to get it back to hand in the end phase. Baldrake and Druid Swarm are a little bit more complicated. We're just going to throw Phantasme in the should side deck section. I don't think you should main deck this card. Not enough decks are, link summoning right now, but this card's obviously really good. And Vanquish Soul, it's a dark, it's a dragon. You can search off Magnum Hut. It fixes your hand for you, which I really like. There are times where I like Phantasme more than I like the Charmies, just because it's guaranteed draws, lets you choose what to fix in your hand, gives you board presence, and then protects your board as well. So Phantasme can be really good, but you should be side decking this card. Please don't main deck this card. Like, unless your locals is just a bunch of Malice or Orcust, do not main deck this card. Back to the other Bystials. So I like Baldrake a lot. This is honestly where I'm at. Genuinely, this is where I'm at. I think that you should be main decking all three, and maybe even something like this instead. I think Baldrake and Druid Swarm both translating for additional interaction. So each of these Bystials represents more than 1 point of interaction, right? Not only do they do what DD Crow does, which is hits something out of grave, granted it's only for light and dark monsters, they also double up as additional points of interaction, right? Like Magnum Hut searches another Bystial, which then translates into more interaction. Baldrake can tribute a light or dark. So let's say that you get Nibiru'd, or you have a rock on board that you aren't using, or you've like summoned a Mad Love off of the trap card. Baldrake banishes something that they would summon from extra deck. So there's going to be times where like the Baldrake by itself might just do a lot more work than other hand traps might have, where you're going to be using a Bystial on a Lunalite monster in grave. And then now if they try to make a different extra deck monster, like if they try to go into Perfume, you're using the Baldrake to banish it, so they lose that body engraved to be able to fuse into their towers later. Or Orcust, same thing, like if they try to go into the Galatea, you've got the Baldrake on board. This basically, what I really like about Baldrake is that this is a card that holds a gun to your opponent's head and says, go ahead and try it, I dare you. Where they basically have to address the Baldrake being live first before they attempt to continue playing the game. Because if they want a combo and this thing's sitting there, they're in trouble. So for example, Ryziel, there are so many times where I'm playing against like Mitsu Ryziel and I'll Baldrake with something else on board. And now it's a problem because if they try to go into Duo Drive or Feral Imps, they're losing it. So they aren't getting a chance to start their turn. So Baldrake really, really, really can put in a lot of work. Druid Swarm, I like to think of this more as a board breaker type deal where, using this card kind of similarly puts a gun to your opponent's head. And I think it's less of that and more of like, it's showing them that I have a gun, where this is saying, okay, pulling a gun to your head, go ahead and I dare you. This is more of like a, ha ha ha, look what I have, tee because this is a looming threat. Not only does this translate for a body out of grave, but this also gets rid of a card on their field. And there's a lot of things that you can do to proactively get rid of this card, whether it's linking it off or it getting nibbed, or you can use interaction on your own field. There was a time where I was playing against Memento and I ended up like interacting my chains, like my chain links, in a way that I was summoning the Druid Swarm before using the trap card, Snow Devil. So I was like chainlink 1 Druid Swarm, chainlink 1 trap, chainlink 2 Druid Swarm, when you'd think, oh, you'd want to do that in reverse order so that the Druid Swarm stays on board. No, because they had something on field that couldn't be destroyed by card effects, but it could be sent to grave. So I had to do it that way because I needed to send that card to grave in order to live. And I ended up living. Actually ended up winning. So it's cute. There's a lot of cards that this card deals with that I really like. So for example, if you're playing against Lunalite, they'll end on double towers, SP, Baguska. If I opened this card and I got to use it, that's one, it's not going to let them get to their full board. And two, whether it's the Baguska or the SP, there is something on their field that I'm going to need to be getting rid of. This gives me the option to do that. This gives me a card that I can use to do that, which I really like. Because if they decide to use Liger Dancer on their turn, for example, to out this, great. I'm getting rid of the Bagooska or the SP anyway on their turn. Okay, Chaos Hunter, I think it's not even worth considering. I think this is probably the highest of the not even worth considering, because it has decent matchups into both Orchist and Lunalight. Obviously, you know, the big thing is Malice. My issue with it is that Malice currently has combo lines that exist under this to remove it, and they're main decking that now anyway. Like, it's not something that they're going out of their way to play, like with Cerberus. It's something that they already currently play. So I don't love this card. Playing against Orchist Mitsu, they can just out discard with the Murakumo, or if the Murakumo is currently already on board, they'll just make you discard 2 cards to summon this thing instead of 1. And then the Lunalight stuff, you know, it's good and it's honestly pretty solid, but it's not like necessary. Like, it's not going to completely ruin their game. Like, not banishing is good, but it's not going to like end things for them. I'd rather just play Lancia rather than Chaos Hunter. If you'll notice, I did not throw some obvious cards in here. So like Lancia's not in here because that's obviously a should be side decking for the format in general. I don't necessarily consider that a Vanquish Soul tech. I did want to throw cards like Ash Blossom and Bell because they're attributes, yada yada. But for the most part, everything that's in here are things that are, you know, hypothetically not necessarily mandatory options. So like, the reason why Nib and Droll are in here is because or like Gamma, is because they're not attributes, but they serve a purpose, and so they're worth discussing. Lancia, Talents, Thrust. I think I actually might have Talents and Thrust in here. Yeah, I do. Some of these things I'm talking about because, you know, where they can go might be different than it would be for other decks. But yeah, so like Lancia is pretty obviously a should side deck type deal. Not a main deck type deal. Marionette might cute, but probably not. This is probably also not even worth considering. It's cute. Again, it depends on what your locals looks like. If you're playing against a whole bunch of like Orchist decks or Fiendsmith decks, it's a dark. It could come up. If you're playing like a blind second build and your locals is just a lot of Fiendsmith and Orchist, sure, why not? You're probably better off just playing the DD Crows instead, but it's cute. It's cute. I like the idea of something that's like cute, but probably not. Skullmeister, I think this is also not even worth considering. Yes, it's a dark, you know, it kind of does the same thing as like the DD Crow in a sense that it's graveyard interruption. I just think that you'd rather these than this, almost guaranteed. This is probably below the Chaos Hunter. Vados is interesting. I'm going to say worth a look. I'm going to say worth a look because this is an anti-field spell card, and the decks that play field spells right now are Bystial, Malice, Orchist, Vanquish Soul. Lunalight doesn't. Mitsu doesn't, unless they're playing a Mitsu build that does, like Mitsu Orchist or Mitsu Bystial. Yeah, I mean, it's relevant. There are times where this card will be nice to use. I also like that this nukes the opponent's board if something happens to it. So like, you'll hit their field spell, summon the Vados to their board, and then go Sue effect, summon Rosin to the Vados column, and then you basically are going to say, okay, I can board nuke you whenever I want, just by getting rid of the Vados. And if you link it off or do something to it, it's gone. So I think it's worth a look. I don't think I'll be playing it, but I think it's worth a look. Okay, Contact C, I think this is not even worth considering. I think this is below Skullmeister. I think this might even be below Reaper. Yeah, and Saronir is all the way down here because you'd rather just play more Baldrake at that point. This does not translate for multiple interactions the way that Baldrake does. I'd rather play DD Crow than Saronir by a mile. What is a Sneaky C? This is cute, but probably not. Yeah, I'm probably just gonna put this here. Like, this isn't stopping anything. I don't think your cards are going to live long enough for this to matter. This is worth a look, I guess. Probably not, right? I mean, what decks are even using spell cards that summon things, right? You've got the Ritual spell from Mitsurugi, but like, if they just summon the Murakumo, this gets board nuked away. Lunalight Does Lunalight have one that summons? I guess Tiger, but like, I don't even know if Tiger would count there. I'd have to read the card. I just don't think that this is, there's enough going on right now for this to be worth it. This is probably like an okay card. Or like an okay card. Maybe this belongs up here. But yeah, we'll throw that up there. We'll throw that into the should side deck. Basically, if you are going to play this card, should side deck is going to be if you are going to play this card, it should be in the side deck. That's what we'll do. Instead of should side deck being like, oh, this card needs to be in your side deck, we'll make it as like a, if you're going to play this card, this is where you should put it. Token Collector, not even worth considering. Bell, we're going to do Can main deck. I actually like this card less than I do DD Crow. This card used to be much better in the public eye or in the public opinion. I think that has changed once people realized that it's not really enough. It also negates activations. I think Bell can be really effective in a simplified game state where like you're in top deck mode and they just need that one card to get back into it. So they'll activate prayers and you'll Bell it and then that'll be the game. I think it's good into a lot of the decks that are existing right now, but I just don't know if I'd rather have this over like the DD Crow, for example. I think permanently getting rid of the card is probably better. Now Bell does work into Malice, so like if you're worried about Malice, this could probably be higher up. But like, I don't know. We're already playing so many cards that are good against Malice, like the Meowls, the Fua, the Phantasme, Delta. Lancea is going to be in the side deck as well. Droll can be effective. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. Somewhere around here. I might rearrange later. We'll see. Cute, but probably not. This is another anti-field spell card. God, what's the name of this card? It's the something Sword Soul. Let me... it's... Sword Soul. God, what's the name of this card? It's weird, and I know it. I had it pulled up previously, and I told myself I wouldn't forget it, but then I forgot it. Basically, it's an anti-field spell card. It's like an anti-field spell board breaker, so it's not... it's not like Vados, which is it's a quick effect to get rid of the field spell. This is a little bit more board breakery in what it does. It's a Byst Dragon Sword Soul. That's what it is, a Byst Dragon Sword Soul. Okay, here we go. Byst Dragon Sword Soul. Must be special summoned by a worm monster's effect. If a monster is banished by card effect... Oh, wait. Why are we playing this card? Who recommended this card? There was somebody in the Vanquish Soul Discord that recommended this. What worm monster is going to be summoning this thing for us? I'll do the justice of talking about it more. If a monster is banished by card effect, you can special summon this card from the graveyard. Oh, I see it. So it can be special summoned by its own effect. Okay, that makes sense. My apologies. My apologies for bullying. Monsters banished by card effect, which does happen, especially if you're playing stuff like DD Crow, Bystials. You know, Malice does it too. Split the card from the graveyard if it was there when the monster was banished, or hand, even if not. Oh, this is a trigger effect. Okay. Which one leaves the field. If this card is special summoned, you can target one card in the field zone and one monster your opponent controls in the graveyard, banish them. So this is interesting, right? Because it's not proactive like Vados, but there are times where this might actually end up coming up and being more impactful, because it's a trigger effect. So you can summon it from hand. It's a fire in hand, which is nice. And then it'll pop a monster. Sorry, it'll banish a monster and the field spell. I don't think that this is worth playing. Maybe in like a really, really heavy field spell format, but even then, like the Vados is just a better card because there's no guarantees that this thing is going to be able to activate. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it's worth having brought up. Cool. Okay, Kaijus. This is another very interesting one. So there's a lot of people that are on Kaijus right now. They're talking about Kaijus and the value of Kaijus because of decks like Lunalight being as... making this unbreakable board as possible. I'm going to say not even worth considering for the Kumungus and the Radian. The Doggeran is worth a look. Might even be build dependent. I'm going to say worth a look. I'll put this above the Vados. Reason being is the Doggeran has 1200 defense, so like you can Kaiju something and then Mad Love bounce the Doggeran back to hand and then Kaiju them again, which I think is nice. Obviously, I think my issue with Lunalight is that Kaijus and Kaiju-like effects aren't the way to go. They cannot be allowed to set up. If they have the opportunity to set up their board, and if you're banking on going onto like a board breaker style approach to beating them, you're not going to be able to get the job done with just a Kaiju. Like I'm sorry to say, there's just too much that needs to go right for the board breakers to work, and a single Kaiju is not going to deal with what their board can set up if you have not interrupted them up to this point. I think it can be a decent complementary piece to cards like Small World because it becomes searchable. I'd side it if I played it, but if you're playing like a blind second build with the Charmies, you could play it as well. I'll probably put that there. I just don't think that it's worth it, you know. Personally, I wouldn't do it. Pankratops, I'm gonna put not even worth considering. Again, this is for DUAD. Once Justice Hunters comes around, I'll make another one of these, and this card's going to be on the should side deck side of things, probably up here, just because of how good it is into Yummy. But for right now, it just doesn't do enough. This is probably going to go behind the Chaos Hunter. Just doesn't do enough. Decks right now aren't worried about this card. Alpha, we're going to put this down here. I should really drop the Ghost Reaper. No, this is probably fine. Alpha's just kind of like a weird Kaiju in a sense. Or like more of a weird Pankratops. Don't love it. It's too slow. At least Pank's a quick effect. Yada yada. Blaster. Okay, so this is kind of a double up. This is both meant to represent like the Dragon Ruler engine in Vanquish Soul and Blaster itself, because you can play Blaster in the deck, discard fires, target a card to get rid of it, and if this gets removed, you have the opportunity to add a Fire Dragon. So if you're playing like a Tempai build, you can play this with that. I think it's worth a look, maybe, especially if you're playing the Rescue Ace engine. This can be a complementary piece. This could also work well in like a blind second style deck where you're using monster style board breakers, but I don't think it's worth it. Lava Golem, I think Lava Golem would go above the Doggeran. There's a couple of reasons. Lava Golem probably goes above this as well. We'll probably do this. Where Lava Golem, you don't have to normal summon with this deck anymore. This is a deck that gives you the opportunity to special summon through multiple methods. You've got Pantera, you've got Holy Sunal, thank God. You've got Stake Your Soul. If you're playing the Fiendsmith build, you've got Fiendsmith cards. So your normal summon is not as required as it used to be. Cards like Lava Golem give you the opportunity to remove multiple points of problematic interaction in exchange for not using your normal summon. It's a fire in hand, and it's a fiend. So this could be decent for small world bridging. I think Lava Golem can be very effective, and unlike the Kaiju, this is more likely to put in work against Lunalight than a single Kaiju is going to. So like, I would rather play this over this, personally. Okay, Kurikara. This is another interesting one. There's people that swear by this card, that this card must be played. There's people that think that this card is not that good. I'm going to put this in worth a look at the top of it, because I think that I would rather play the Lava Golem than the Kurikara. I don't like the idea that my opponent is going to get the opportunity to play and use their interaction before my Kurikara gets its value. So there's one thing. Another thing is that a lot of the decks right now are playing Mitsu cards, and Kurikara doesn't necessarily do anything beneficial for us there. Like, they might still have the opportunity to summon stuff back. Now there's opportunities here, obviously, for the Kurikara to basically be a single, I'm going to end the game right now by itself tile card. Like, think about like Mitsu, if they're playing like Futsu, and you get them to play through everything, and you summon the Murakumo, and it gets board nuked, and yada yada. You can then just go, okay, that's a nice 5 monsters on your field. Here's a massive Kurikara attributing your whole board. All of their effects have already been activated. I'm going to swing for lethal in one hit. That is an option, but I just don't like it. You know, this was a much better option back during Kashtira format, where like Shangri-Era was already using its effects, the special, and you just really needed to get rid of the Arise Heart. But I don't know. I definitely don't want to like guarantee this card a spot. I think it works way better with cards like Small World in play, especially with Droll. But I don't know. I don't think that this should be played over. Maybe this should be played over like the Doggeran. But again, it's like, what are you solving with this? The Kurikara, you might be able to Kaiju over the 2 towers, or the SP Little Knight, but they'd have to use those cards first. And if they've used those cards this turn already, you've probably lost the game as it is. Like, I don't expect you to win anything because you summoned back Kurikara. Or sorry, because you summoned Kurikara and tributed over their boards. And that isn't, this also doesn't answer the Baguska that they're ending on. Like, you're going to use the Kurikara, you're going to book their, attribute their cards, and then what? I'm going to skip this song as well. And then what, right? They still have the Baguska. You're not attacking or anything. This card's just going to sit there. So, I don't know. I don't love the Kurikara. Personally, I don't love it. I think that it doesn't address enough to justify it being there. And none of the decks that you're playing into, this feels like a super strong counter to. The upsides for it are that this can really force a simplified game state. So like there's times where this card is going to tribute boards, and that Holy Sue that's in your hand, it's going to get its value on the next turn. This also summoning something from grave in the end phase means that you can take a valuable card from them. So like, let's say you steal their Murakumo, right? So there's times where I feel like Kurikara is going to be extremely high impact. The reason why I'm probably not giving it a spot in my list is because I just don't think it answers any of the problems set up by decks that we're playing into right now. So there's probably a lot more nuance behind this, and I'm sure that people that end up playing this card will have moments where it just feels really good. But again, it does nothing proactively to answer any of the decks that I'm worried about. Pot of Extravagance and Pot of Prosperity, I think these are both can main. I think this is build dependent. This is probably up here. Prosperity, same thing. I think these are build dependent. I don't love Prosby. I think you need to have the extra deck space for it to play this card, obviously. I don't know. I just don't love it. I'm not going to tell you that you can, like, I guess you can main deck this guy. Extrav is definitely going to be build dependent though. Like you need to be on pure and basically only pure. Maybe VS Mitsu can play this as well, but like a lot of Vanquish Soul variants cannot afford to play this card because they need the extra deck. Now this is also one of those things where it's like, this theoretically could be like all the way up here, right? Because hey, draw two, it's nice, but definitely build dependent. Metaltronus. So this is one that somebody suggested that I put in here. I think that this is an okay pick, right? Because if you're playing pure, you have the opportunity to play a lot of stuff in your extra deck that can really interact with the board. Like Fiendsmith, you can play Underworld Goddess in your extra deck, and now you hit Fiendsmith cards and you hit Detonator. That lets you go into Fiendsmith. So like you can Metaltronus, target the Detonator, summon Underworld Goddess, the Detonator's negated. Now I can go into my Fiendsmith plays. This can also hit... honestly, not that much. Not that much that we're already main decking cards for. If you're on the Mitsu build, I'm going to put build dependent, but I'm going to put this below the shifter. Because I think if you're on certain builds, this makes more sense, right? Like if you're on the Mitsu build, you're going to have extra deck space and Mitsu cards in your main deck. So like you can use the Metaltronus on the Murakumo in response to their effect to make you discard. And then, hey, that gets negated now. And I get to summon a free level 4 body for my deck. So, hey, you know, build dependent for sure. Shared Ride. Cute, but probably not. So this is one of those things where it's like, yeah, it'll be nice to be able to draw cards and deep draw for my deck. I just don't know what matchups this is going to be awesome into. Also, this seems a little just straight up worse than Charmies do. I guess if you're going first, this can be value. But if you're going first, you've typically set up a board already, right? So you're not even worried about what this card's going to get for you. You know, it's different for a deck like Sky Striker, where you just really need to be drawing into hand traps and interaction. Plus, it's a spell engrave, but like, not in Vanquish Soul. Salesman is another one that I think is interesting. I think it's worth a look. I'll put this above the rest here. I think the Salesman is interesting because you can use this as both a board breaker and a proactive like protection type thing, where you can go like, hey, I'm going to call Droll and Lock Bird. Now they can't droll me. Or I'll call Nibiru. No, they can't nib me. Or I'm going to call Detonator. So now their Detonator on field doesn't do anything. So I do like the idea of what Salesman can represent. I just don't know if I'd put it... I guess we'll put this in can main deck. I'll put this... I think you'd rather main deck Bell than Salesman, but I think that Salesman actually does have a lot of utility in what it provides for the deck. The fact that it's not an attribute can be pretty problematic. Maybe this goes below the prosperity, but I do like what this card brings to the table. I like that it is both doubling up as a board breaker and a hand trap preventer. It's just, it has a low ceiling, and like if you're playing Droll and you use this call Droll, now any copies of Droll in your hand are super dead, because unlike other hand traps like the Bells, the Bystials, the Crow, the Impulse Fire Attacker, the Ash Blossoms, right? At least those cards are proper attributes. If you Salesman call Droll with Droll in your hand, that Droll is now as dead as possible. At least the other hand traps, you'd get double value out of your attributes. Blizzard, I think it's cute, but probably not. It's probably up here, honestly. Blizzard can be really effective into specific matchups. Like there's times where like if you use this on the Lunalight Tiger, that's really funny. Actually, that's really funny. You can use this on the Malice Field spell. That's also really funny. You can use this on the Mitsu Ritual spell. That's also really funny. Wait, am I gaslighting myself into thinking that this card is really good? You can use this on the Vanquish Soul field spell. You can use this on the Mitsu Ritual spell. You can use this on the Malice Field spell. You can use this on any board breaker that they might use against you that's a spell card. You can use this on Lunalight Tiger or the Lunalight Fusion spells, like Heavy Poly or Lunalight Poly or regular Poly or Masquerade. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Chat. Oh, no. I might be really liking this card suddenly. Against Orcust, you can hit the field spell, so none of their stuff becomes quick effects. Oh, God. Wait. Wait. All right, we're going to put this in Worth a Look. I'm going to put this at the top of Worth a Look. I'm actually going to playtest with that later because of this. Wow, okay. Very cool. And if you play against a Sky Striker player, you use this on Engage. Oh, so good. So good. Saucy. Okay, this is my personal favorite Vanquish Soul tech card of all time. This is Final Bringer of the End Times. For those of you who don't know what this card does, it's like a custom tailor-made quick play spell for Vanquish Soul. So you target one monster you control and one card your opponent controls, destroy them, right? The cool part is that this is worded like Princess, so you do not have to destroy the card that you control. You just have to target it, and you have to destroy, it'll attempt to destroy both. So what'll end up happening, I'm going to skip this song too. This is a little too upbeat. It's stealing my thunder. God, this is just like, target one monster. You can target Rosin and like a field spell or something, or like Lunalight Masquerade, and then chain Borger target Rosin, and Final Bringer will not pop your Rosin because it's in hand, and it will pop the card that you targeted. Or like, let's say you activate Mad Love effect to search, and they go imperm target. You can go, okay, sure, here's Borger target Mad Love, bounce back, get my field spell anyway. Or, hey, if you have the attributes in hand, normal Rosin, effect to search Sue, imperm the Rosin, chain Final Bringer, targeting Rosin, targeting the imperm. Now the Rosin and the imperm are both destroyed, so that the Rosin doesn't get negated by imperm. You get to search Sue, you get to continue playing. You can also use this to target a monster you control that can't be destroyed by card effects. Or you can chain Rosin to it to make it not be destroyed by card effects. You can chain your trap card to it to make them not able to be destroyed by card effects. If you're playing Princess, you can go Princess, chainlink 1, targeting Rosin. Final Bringer, chainlink 2, Rosin and their monster. Final Bringer, chainlink 2, targeting Rosin and something else. Borger, chainlink 3, targeting Rosin. So Borger's going to bounce back. Final Bringer's going to pop the card. Princess is going to pop the monster and summon the Princess back. And this is all before you get Fire Locked, so the Borger does hit board. So, just saying, I really like this card in Vanquish Soul. This also is helpful for using like a dead rock of the Vanquisher, like a rock of the Vanquisher on the opponent's turn that's already used its effect. This card deals with. This card also deals with problematic cards like Light Dark Chaos Angel. We don't have a response to that in our main deck. We kind of need to be playing tech cards for that. So I'm going to put this at the top of Worth a Look. I really like this card. I really like this card. And I think that if you are a Vanquish Soul player that has not played this card, try it as a one-of. and then let me know what you think, because I love hearing about people that played this card and came to the conclusion that it is just amazing. Okay, Gordian Slicer. I think this is also a build dependent. This is probably going to be up here, maybe here. I think Gordian Slicer can be really effective. It is build dependent because you can only really afford to play it in lists that don't care about their extra deck, or can snowball into resources really well. So like a Mitsu build would use Gordian Slicer really well because like all they have to do is keep Habakiri or Prayers. Then they can do full Vanquish Soul combo anyway. This just deals with a lot by itself. So this also doesn't care if you've played on their turn. Ultimate Slayer, I think that this is probably... This is build dependent as well. This is probably close to Gordian Slicer. These might be interchangeable. I like that Ultimate Slayer has a lot of options for what it can send. So like if you're playing against, if you're worried about Lunalight, you can Ultimate Slayer target one of their towers to send Perfume Dancer. And yeah, you won't shuffle back the Lunalight fusion, but the Perfume Dancer is going to make both Liger Dancers only have like 300 attack. And that's a permanent reduction, by the way. So yeah, they might have these two massive tower monsters, but they're not massive anymore. Now they're tiny. It becomes harder for them to kill you on a follow-up turn. And so they actually might end up having to get rid of these towers if they want to be able to kill you successfully. So I think that it's cute. You can also deal with basically every single deck that you play against using this card as a side deck card. Depends on what's in your extra deck. But I'm going to say build dependent because you have to build around having this card in your extra deck. Same thing for Super Poly. I'm going to put this here. I like that Super Poly can be used. I'll put this here. I like Super Poly. I like that Super Poly can be used to go first or second. It doubles up as both a board breaker and an interruption. And again, you have to build your extra deck around it. But almost every single deck in the game right now has vulnerabilities to Super Polymerization. I think the biggest issue that I have with it is that one, you have to discard a card for it, and getting rid of your own cards is almost never a good thing. But you know, the work that it puts in can be very effective. So I don't love this card. Again, I like this card. And there are times where there are formats that this card just cleans people up. This is probably not that format. Small World, this is a can main deck. I'm actually going to put this above Pot of Prosperity, maybe even above the Sales Ban. I like what Small World does for this deck. This is a card that, regardless of what build you are playing, so the reason why it's not build dependent is because basically any Vanquish Soul build that you are playing, this is a good card. You can use this to search basically any card in your deck. This can be used to search hand traps. Like there are times where I will use, after I've gotten my value out of my Rosin, I will use the Small World, banishing Rosin to go into Ash Blossom. Because I still have the 2 fires in hand I need for the Xiaolong. I can just search another Rosin if I need it. So it's like, yeah, I'll just search a hand trap. Why not? Or like you can get Droll off of this card, which I think is really nice. Like their Lancey has another one. Like you can literally use this card to search for silver bullets with just excess cards that you have in your hand, which I think is really, really effective. Really effective. This might actually even be up here. I think the biggest issue with Small World is one, it's not an attribute, and a lot of these things are so high because they're either massive impact style cards or, you know, they're attributes. Small World could probably fall anywhere along this line, and I would agree with it. I think that this is basically a custom printed card for Vanquish Soul as an archetype. Pinpoint Landing, cute, but probably not. Yeah, you draw a lot of cards every turn. Like you'll draw one card, your turn, one card, their turn, one card, your turn, one card, their turn. But you know, you could just play better cards than this. Like, just play Rescue Ace Impulse. This lets you draw 2 cards. Hey, and you don't have to worry about this giving your opponent draws and not being an attribute and requiring that you go first. So I would rather just play this card and then use this to summon Fire Attack or draw 2 during their turn. And you're like, yeah, you have to discard 1, but you just drew 2. You can custom pick whatever you want to discard, you know? And you get a body off of this. Like, this is cute, but probably not. Gravekeeper's Inscription. This is a should side deck. This might even go above the Lava Golem. I think that this card's really good. This might even go above the Delta. I really, really like Gravekeeper's Inscription. Like you have an effect that you can declare for basically every single matchup. So This card is if I go first, I really want to be using this like against Mitsurugi. You can call no graveyard effects. So like none of their monsters are going to summon out of the graveyard because they need to be able to trigger in the graveyard to do that. Malice, can't banish from the graveyard. Lunalight, can't summon from graveyard. Orchest, can't summon from graveyard or can't use graveyard effects. Either works. Like, this card just puts in so much work against so many matchups. I think that this is almost a like must-be side decking type deal. Talents, this is really anywhere. You can main deck this. I don't even know if I'm going to be side decking this card. I think obviously it's good, and when it works great. I just feel like this is a format where Talents doesn't feel as good as it used to, and there's going to be times where this card feels awesome. Where you're going to use this card, be like, oh, how did I ever not play this card? And there's times where you're going to look at it and just hate life. I just don't know if it does enough work right now. I think decks are too complex to the point where like looking at their hand and hand ripping something isn't really going to be doing much for you. But it's a decent board breaker. You know, maybe it'll draw you 2 cards. Maybe you'll steal something. Maybe it's a simplified game state and you choose to hand rip, right? So that you know what you have to interact with. I do like that it gives you public information. Thrust, I'm gonna put in build dependent. I think the reason why is like we are suddenly playing way less normal spells than usual. Side decks aren't really playing cards like D-Barrier or Artifact Sanctum anymore, and so Thrust just isn't really doing as much work as it used to. And also, like, what normal spell are you gonna grab with this? You're gonna grab Stake Your Soul? That just feels really mid. You're gonna grab, I guess you could grab Talents, but like, what happens if it happens you go first? You're gonna set your Snow Devil? No, you're not, because your field spell's supposed to do that for you. So I think Talents is justifiable because of everything it brings to the table. I feel like Thrust is more of a complementary piece, and we are not a deck that plays cards that benefit from Thrust anymore. This might be build dependent because, like, obviously if you're playing like the Striker build, like Soul Striker, this can be really effective. If you're playing like Blind Second board breaker style, this can search you like Gordian Slicer, for example, or Ultimate Slayer. So I'm going to put this as build dependent because this is really flexible to the build that you're playing. But for the most part, you should not be playing this card. There could be only one. Should side deck. Maybe this goes here. This card's nuts. This might, like this again, this goes anywhere along here. This card's really strong right now. You hit Mitsurugi with it, they can't summon more reptiles. You hit, Fiendsmith with it, they can't summon more fiends. You hit Lunalight with it. You hit Malice with it. You hit... Ryzeal's probably the worst one to use it against. But, I mean, that's 4 of the top 5 engines in the game. Orchest, same thing. Like, 5 of the 6 top engines in the game right now, this card's nuts against. You should probably be playing this in the side deck. This card's insane. The card is insane. We're gonna do these 2 together. I'm gonna get rid of I'm gonna do the continuous traps first. So this is worth a look. I think your finished is, I'm gonna pull this card up because for people that don't know it, I think this is one of the most fun cards for Vanquish Soul to play in the game right now. It's a continuous trap. It's one of those trap monsters, so like you can play the Silo Hat Rabbit to set this card from deck. But if 10 or more cards and or effects have been activated during the turn, special summon this card as an effect monster. 3,000, by the way. This thing's huge. This card is also still a trap, but set it in your spell and trap zone during your end phase. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a card or effect while this card is in your monster zone, you can destroy as many cards your opponent controls as possible, then set this card in your spell and trap card zone. So this is an infinitely recurring board nuke. And this says if 10 or more cards and or effects have been activated this turn. It does not distinct who needs to activate those card effects. So, as an example, during your draw phase, activate, Borger, activate, to draw 1, activate Xiaolong to search 1, so that's 2. Rock to summon or add back, Sue to summon from hand, Sue to use the effect on field, Borger to summon from hand, Caesar to summon from hand and pop, so that's 2. Rosin to search, Rosin to column pop, Mad Love to search, Mad Love to bounce, Snow Devil, any other cards that you might play, any hand traps, any cards that they play. So you realistically, before they get the chance to even attempt to play the game, you could hit somewhere from like 5 to 9 cards or effects that have been activated this turn. And so kind of like the Baldrake, this is now just holding a gun to their head and saying, go ahead and play the game whenever you want. I'm going to summon this as a body that says if you activate a single card, I'm going to nuke your board. Like the whole board, not just monsters, everything. This card is really silly, and it is technically searchable. Searchable because of Sil... How do you spell Silohat? Just go rabbit. Nope. How do you spell Silohat? Is it Sil? All right, I'm gonna Google this. Silo. Oh, you know what? That's what it is. It was SILH. This guy. Yeah. Silohat rabbit, right? So this lets you set your finished from your deck. So you just use excess bodies to make this guy, summon rock underneath its zone, and then you got an extra zone that you can use if you would want to, and you've got this thing that basically tells your opponent, hey, if you play the game too much, you're gonna stop. This is a one-sided Zeus that is recyclable because it sets itself every single turn. So you can summon this as a 3k body on your turn because you're going to be able to do a whole lot. If they try to interact with you, same thing. That's more cards and effects have been activated. I think that this card is ridiculous and kind of like Final Bringer, feels almost like personally tailor-made to be a non-engine card that Vanquish Soul can take advantage of. Give it a try. It's fun. I don't know if it's correct, but it's really fun. And this card will always be good in Vanquish Soul, kind of like Final Bringer will be. It's not even format dependent. Power Sink Stone, also worth a look. I'm going to put this at the top of worth a look. Or even in should side deck. I think Power Sink Stone is another card that feels really good with Vanquish Soul, right? So each time a monster effect is activated, place one spellstone counter on this card. So basically you'll activate your effects. It'll recognize on the resolution of the chain that a monster effects have been activated, and it'll place up to 2 counters. While this card has 2 spellstone counters, neither player can activate the effects of face-up monsters on the field. Also, the effects of face-up monsters on the field are negated. Once per turn, during the end phase, if this card has any spellstone counters, remove them. So basically what's going to happen is you'll activate this card in the draw phase, then you'll go Borger effect to draw 1. So that's 1 monster effect. And then you could do like Sue effects to summon from deck or something. That's 2. So now this is basically a skill drain that both negates and prevents activations. So Power Sink Stone can be very, very effective because it also prevents players from activating card effects. So there's actually the opportunity for this to stop Lunalight Towers monsters from using their effects, which I think is awesome, by the way. And this only negates effects on field, so you can still use your in-hand effects to bounce cards back or to summon bodies. And then this is going to reset every end phase. So if this ends up becoming a problem for you, guess what you get to do? Caesar Valius effect. Non-targeting pops Power Sink Stone. So I really like what this card can do for the deck. This feels like skill drain, but better. And we are almost always going to get to be the one that uses both of those monster effects, just because of the nature of our quick effects with our deck. Okay, transaction rollback. I'm going to put this right here as worth a look. So if you draw this card on field, this is going to use an effect of a trap card in your opponent's graveyard. There's a lot of really good trap cards running around, like the Dominus cards, for example. Right? The Dominus cards restrictions only apply if they activate from hand, so you don't, like if you Dominus Impulse somebody using transaction rollback, you don't have to worry about the negative effect of that. This can work on imperms, Dominus Impulses, any other trap cards they might play, genuinely, that might be in their graveyard. And then in your graveyard, this is another copy of Snow Devil. So if you use Snow Devil, this is a second copy of Snow Devil that you can use from graveyard at any point in time, which I think is really nice. This gives you the opportunity to double board nuke, which is cool. And burn as well. Summon, burn, board nuke, whatever. You know, protect your monsters. I think that this is a card that's like actually kind of underrated. Now, obviously, you wouldn't like people aren't playing this in Vanquish Soul because it's a trap card. You know, it's not an attribute, but like if you think about the ceiling on what this card can accomplish for the deck, the number one biggest complaint the Vanquish Soul players have at this point now is that we don't have a way to recur the spells and traps that we've used from our graveyard, right? This is technically that. Like, I would like to be able to add Snow Devil from graveyard back to hand. Well, now I kind of get to if I play Transaction Rollback. This also works with cards like EEV. If you want to side EEV, you can. But yeah, so I think that this is actually worth a look. Same thing with Black Goat Laughs. I think this is worth a look. This is a card that lets us declare a name. They cannot use that name's effects. So like, instead of playing cards like Gamma and Driver, or like Called By in an attempt to stop Droll and Lock Bird, what if we played Black Goat Laughs and Foolish Burial Goods? Is you could play like Transaction Rollback, Foolish Burial Goods, and Black Goat Laughs instead of like Called By the Grave, Gamma, Driver. And what ends up happening is these both double up as interactions on the field. So if you draw them, they're now usable on field as good cards. Black Goat Laughs, you can declare a monster name. They cannot special summon monsters of that name. So like if you're going second into basically any deck in the game, you just call whatever their best card is, whatever their best monster is. Like against Ryzul, you can call Detonator or Duo Drive, or probably Exciton Knight if you're going second, right? Or if you're playing against Mitsurugi, you can call Murakumo. If you're playing against Lunalight, you can call Liger. If you're going against Orcust, you can call Galatea Eye. If you're playing, like, there's just a lot of cards that you can call where this ends up being really, really good and really effective. You can draw this and not feel bad about it. If you're playing against Mitsurugi going second, and this is in your opening hand, you can sack this off for Murakumo when it asks you to discard something. And so now you can use this card in graveyard as a preventative measure. So there's a lot of things that I really like about this that I think can be very effective. So like you can basically send this card. Does it just prevent all of that name, or on field specifically? Was it the Black Goat Laughs? Declare one monster card name. This turn, neither player can special summon a monster with that original name, except from the graveyard, so that's on field, right? Versus card from your graveyard, then declare one monster card name. This turn, neither player can activate the effects of monsters on the field with that original name. Okay, so on the field, this can really get into the mirror. This can be decent into a lot of decks where basically if this card gets sent to grave by Foolish Burial Goods, or like Murakumo making you discard it, this lets you play through their existing board. So like you can use this to call Snow Devil in the mirror, and now they can't activate Snow Devil for that turn unless they chain it. Or like Holy Sue or Caesar Valius, where those cards are in their hand, they now have to respond immediately to get it on board. But even then, card's not on board yet, so the Black Goat Laughs is going to resolve. Now they can't special summon and use the effect on field in the same turn. So just some things to look at. I don't hate it. I think with Transaction Rollback, like if you cut the non-attributes from your deck for these cards, there's actually something to be said about playing them, especially if you are playing Thrust. That was what makes Thrust build dependent. Playing Thrust, and these cards are in your build, hey, nice. I have cards that I can set now and feel comfortable about it. Okay, so now we're sort of moving into an interesting part here on, this is sort of the bridge between like different builds and tech cards. So Wraith Soth is build dependent. I'm going to put this down here. If for some reason you are still on the Kashtira cards, you would want to play Wraith Soth, sort of, right? I think the Kashtira cards have basically all but been removed from decks at this point. You still technically can play them. So like if you are worried about not being able to special summon Fenrir, you can play cards like Haggard Lizardos, so that, you know, oh, I summoned Sue plus this body on your turn. Well, I have two bodies on the field right now. Great. I'll just link them off immediately for Lizardos. Use Lizardos to banish itself, targeting one of their monsters. Draw a card, and now I can play Fenrir. So there are options to still play like Fenrir and the Kashtira monsters and it not conflict with the deck itself or the engine itself. But this is build dependent. Now, this is Noble Arms Museum. I kind of wanted to talk about this. This is going to pair off. This is also going to be build dependent. This is a card that searches Durandal, right? We know that Durandal searches Rosin. So what you can do is you can play Noble Arms Museum to search Durandal, Durandal to search Rosin, and Terraforming and Set Rotation also are going to be build dependent, right? Because if you're playing Noble Arms Museum to search Durandal or Wraith Soth to search Kashtira cards, you're also playing Vanquish Soul Start, so this gets you to your field spell. Because it depends on what builds you're playing, how many engines you're playing, if those engines have field spells. I like that Set Rotation can be both used offensively and defensively. So like, for example, if you're playing against Malice, you can chain this to their attempt to activate a field spell, and now the field spell gets destroyed, doesn't resolve, and they can't attempt to activate a new one because you still have your set on the field. Same thing with like Rise Cross or the Orchest field spell. Or you can use this proactively to combo, because like you give them one, then you activate Vanquish Soul Start, or like if you play more than one start, you can activate with the one that you do have, and you know, play into your engine here. I think Set Rotation is really build dependent. Terraforming actually probably goes above Set Rotation, because like Terraforming might even not be that bad in Pure, just because it gives you the opportunity to play more non-start like searchers for Mad Love, but with how hard the deck plays into Droll already, I wouldn't recommend it. I do like Noble Arms Museum sort of being like, oh, I can search Durandal, I can play my engine. It enables me to play cards like Terraforming and Set Rotation in order to like justify the fact that I can search a Vanquish Soul starter with this, or like Start, or this other field spell. You know what? These are probably not going into build dependent. These are probably going into cute, but probably not. I guess we'll keep Wraith Soth and build dependent. Set Rotation will be in cute, but probably not. Terraforming will be in cute, but probably not. Durandal, cute, but probably not. No, Durandal's just not even worth considering. I guess Durandal's build dependent, right? I guess if you're going blind second, Durandal has some justification. Oh, the music stop? Oh no, that's just a weird lull. Okay. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know. We're kind of getting to the point where like these cards really don't mean anything, and I just wouldn't recommend playing them. It'd be worth a look to be up there. I'll probably do that. Yeah, everything up here is like things that should be either tried or played almost regardless of build. And these are all stuff that should be played or considered based on your build. Fiendsmith build. Okay, so now we're getting away from specific cards and more getting into engines themselves. So like Engraver is going to represent the Fiendsmith build. This will represent like the Unchained build. This can also kind of double up as itself. This is K9, so we're doing DUAD, but I'm just like, K9, yeah, you should main deck that. It's pretty obvious. I wouldn't take that too seriously. I think that the super heavy stuff is not even worth considering. There's just way better builds at this point, and this adds bricks into your deck for no reason. And if you're going to add bricks into your deck, they might as well just be straight up better cards, like a better engine. I'm going to put this above the super heavy stuff. This is the new Automat stuff. I haven't looked into it too hard, but I just know that there is no reason to be playing this when you can be playing other engines. Like this extra deck locks you into XYZs. At that point, just play the Ryziel engine, right? This also, I think, uses normal summons, and you definitely don't want conflicting normal summons if you can help it. So yeah, I wouldn't rank this too terribly high. I don't even think it's worth considering right now. Also not worth considering is going to be the Excel and Revolution Synchron. I don't think that either of these are worth much right now. You'd have to be in a really, really heavy like combo build of this deck to justify it, and I just don't think that that's worth it. There are just way better combo decks right now. Tenpai. So Tenpai is interesting. I don't think that it's worth considering, but we'll put the Tenpai build in cute, but probably not. I think that it's possible. You know, you could play a blind second version of this deck that loads up on the Charmies in the main deck. and then plays cards like Blaster, goes, you know, blind second, yada, 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 and then drops Tempai, right? Because the game plan is to see Sue, you're playing deep draw, see Sue, play a little bit on their turn, break their board, do your Vanquish Soul setup without needing your normal summon, and then once they're out of resources, normal summon Pydra, right? I get it. I do get it. And maybe it is worth a look. Maybe we put this as worth a look. I just don't think that it's going to be the move. So the Millennium stuff, I think that this is build dependent, and I'll put this above Metaltronus. I think that this is build dependent for sure. If you're playing the Fiendsmith build, this makes more sense because this can bridge into Fiendsmith immediately. Their Earths in hand. They're also huge, which is nice. These are just free summons, so like if you want to play cards like You're Finished or you know, things that you just need to print excess bodies for, this can be good. So like if you're playing like a build that uses Durandal, this can be nice because this just gives you a free body without any commitment required to it. I just think that you should really only be playing this if you're on the Fiendsmith build, and you should only be playing this in the Fiendsmith build if you're on like a big, like you're basically trying to make like a big deck. With just like a whole bunch of bridges into Fiendsmith, which brings me into the Mimighoul build. I think the Mimighoul build, similarly to the Millennium build, should only be considered if you are on a Fiendsmith Vanquish Soul pile. If you go back to my player prep series from the first chapter, not the second one, I played a Mimighoul Fiendsmith Vanquish Soul list that I really liked. It's no longer viable in the same way that it used to be, just because certain cards are missing, like the Beatrice, rest in peace. But what I liked about it was that Maker by itself represented two bodies at any point in time, because you give them one, you get one, and so the ones that you get are either like give them dragon and you get Archfiend, and then Archfiend flips the dragon, then you get the dragon back, or you get dragon, they get Archfiend, and then dragon searches the field spell, which can get you a free summon that way. And all of this without using a normal summon. So I liked that this could bridge into the Fiendsmith stuff, and then the Fiendsmith stuff is designed to bridge into the Vanquish Soul stuff. But I think that the current Fiendsmith into Vanquish Soul line does not allow for Mimighoul to do that. So I think both of these are build dependent, but I probably would actually, I'll put these in cute, probably not. Just because I think that because the current Fiendsmith line does not allow for full combo by going into Closed Moon, you probably wouldn't want to play these. You probably wouldn't want to. We're gonna go not even worth considering. I get that Red Layer is a proper attribute, but so what? I mean, the deck doesn't really do anything, and there's so many non-attributes, and so for what? Same thing with Regenesis. Like, the value that you're getting out of... I'll put Regenesis up here. The value that you're getting out of the Super Quantum cards, it's not worth it to not play attributes. Same thing with Regenesis. Like, the reason why Regenesis is this much higher is because I think of all of these builds that I've thrown down here, Regenesis is probably the most individually powerful one. I just don't think that it's worth it, right? Like, some of them are just not attribute friendly. Like, yeah, you can play Extrav. I just think that there's just way better builds of this deck to be playing. And not even worth considering. Is it necessarily worse than Cupid? Probably not. Cupid probably not is like, oh, that's, hey, that's creative, right? So maybe here. Maybe not even Cupid, probably not. Just do cute, but no. Do cute, but no. There we go. Where I recognize the creativity behind the card itself, or like behind the cards here, and like why you would play them, but no. So I just think that Regenesis is not even worth considering, because I think you're wasting your time on it. There isn't necessarily anything that this brings to the table in a way that like other engines don't. Like, at least with the Tempai stuff, what you're doing is you're giving yourself a comfortable OTK built into the way that you build your deck. And the Tempai engine is so powerful by itself that, hey, whatever, right? You can Magnum Hut search the Genroku in their end phase, and then Genroku can trigger and like set it. You get all that set up ready to go. So there's just a lot of things that like Tempai has that Regenesis doesn't have going for it. And like, I get that Regenesis is powerful. I get that the archetype is cool and you don't need your extra deck for it, but like, there's just better engines to be playing, and it's not cute, so I don't put it in the cute, but no, I'm putting it in the not even worth considering. Kashtira is build dependent. I mean, I think that we cut this card now completely. Same thing with like the Rise Heart. I think that we just cut this card outright. Just because it conflicts with Sue. So like, there's times where we're going to be holding this in our hand going second, and we're looking at like Sue. We're just like, wow, that sucks that we have Fenrir. Now, what I will say is that I actually view these as similar to Fua in the main deck, where it's like, okay, well, if you go, it's the inverse, right? If you go first, these cards are actually really nice to have. You know, it can be really effective at getting you attributes, setting up an extra form of interaction, getting you a free body. It does let you custom tailor the attributes in your hand to get an earth or a fire. I think the issue is that Fua's impact is so much higher than what Fenrir being able to search Rise Harder itself is for the deck. Like, yeah, you would side it out you know, when you go second, whereas like this, you would side out when you go first. But I don't know. It's not the worst thing in the world if you want to still play Fenrir and Rise Heart. I'll say that. If you want to still play it, that's okay. And it is going to depend on the build. Like, you have to sort of build your extra deck to compensate for that. Cards like Lizardos, for example. Okay, so now we're getting into the weeds on some of these. I think the Horus is not even worth considering, but I'm actually going to put this above the Regenesis. I think that the Horus stuff is impactful when it works, right? Like Imseti being a dark and able to draw one, and like them being able to print bodies. So like, they can go zombie vampire to get you into the Vanquish Soul names. They can go into Coach King to draw and burn, right? There's a lot of opportunity for these cards to be really highly impactful. They're free summons. I just think that this engine is not that great right now. I do like what this can do. Maybe it's worth a look. Maybe it's worth a look. I'm gonna put this in build dependent. We'll put this down here. We'll put it in build dependent. I think maybe I'm just not giving enough credit to where did it go? Am I losing my mind? Oh yeah, there it is. Worth a look. I might have to try this out. Actually, I'm now curious to see how it feels. I think that there's bricks in the deck itself that make it difficult to justify. Like, only Imseti is really like the one that you'd want to see in your hand, but maybe it's here. Yeah, we're gonna go cute, but no. I think that it is cute. I just think that there's just better builds to be playing right now. This doesn't really do much to bridge into Vanquish Soul other than like make zombie vampire and prey. It doesn't help if you get drolled. I like that it can be sticky. Like, it's tough to out a Horus field. Don't play Horus Vanquish Soul if you're gonna play Horus. You know? Play like Horus Stun or something. And if you're gonna play Vanquish Soul, don't play Horus, right? So it's like, because you're playing Horus, don't play Vanquish Soul. And because you're playing Vanquish Soul, you might be able to play Horus, but why play Vanquish Soul with Horus instead of Vanquish Soul with something else? And if you want to have fun with, like, the cute but no is kind of like, if you want to have fun with it and do it and mess around with it, sure, right? Have some fun. But as like an objective position, this is no. Okay. Soul Striker. This is actually, in my opinion, worth a look. I think that Soul Striker, the Vanquish Soul Sky Striker build, is actually really, really effective. This is meant to represent Sky Striker as a whole, not Ray specifically. Zero is able to search Rosin by making Dempsey. So like, you go drones to Kagari, add back drones, link 2 into zero summon Ray and Rose, overlay for Dempsey, all without using a normal summon. So that's if you really need Vanquish Soul access. Additionally, you can load up on power spells that deep draw. So like, you'll be playing cards that deep draw into engine. So like the overall point of it is to play blind second, and then basically use your striker cards as board breakers and resource generation in order to draw into your Vanquish Soul attributes. So people might look at this and say, oh, half your deck is spell cards, this can't possibly be good. And while I'll say, yeah, in theory, in practice, this oftentimes ends up feeling way better than it should. That's speaking from experience, by the way, speaking from experience. Now, I don't think that it's correct, so to speak, because I think that it's more correct to prioritize getting Sue access and having Sue work as soon as possible. But I played this deck before the new support came out for a while, and I loved it because there's turns where you're just going like plus 11 with your deck. You're just doing ridiculous things and you just feel invincible. But worth a look, worth giving it a try. If you haven't tried it before, I recommend trying it just for funsies. I don't think that I'd bring it to any like major tournament though. I guess we'll see. I'll have to give it a look. Right? It's worth a look. Okay. Fire King. I think Fire King is also worth a look. I would put this above Striker but below Final Bringer. I think that Final Bringer and Upward are all cards that like realistically could be in the deck, and I might actually myself end up playing at the YCS. Sorry, not the YCS, at the NAWCQ. Like this is stuff that I genuinely might end up playing. I gotta give it a look, right? I gotta play test with it a little bit first. But I think the Fire King stuff is maybe just a step too far. I think the biggest issue with the Fire King stuff is that it doesn't necessarily bridge into Vanquish Soul in any way that's like super comfortable. I like that it is both kind of a board breaker and a protector. Like Kieran can protect your cards by helping you dodge interaction, but like so does Final Bringer. Like, at least in Kieran's case, you know, you're getting a body out of it, and there's a whole engine like contained within it. But I just don't know if I would play this over different engines. Like, yes, this is all fire, and like maybe you just play Kieran and Garunix and maybe Arvada, but like I don't know. This is probably more justifiable than Soul Striker. Maybe it's here. Maybe it's here. I think the Soul Striker stuff, you can commit really hard to it and make it feel good. I think the Fire King stuff is just maybe a little bit too much. Maybe you play this in like a 60 card build. That's possible. Okay, we're getting into the harder stuff now. So this is Great Bill. This is a request by somebody in the Vanquish Soul server. Dude, now I got to figure out who requested it because I think I want to give them a shout out because I thought it was funny. Let's see. Great Bill. Who? Okay. All right. It was it Night Shredder? Yes. Yeah. It was Night. So it was here. Yeah. Night Cider or Slider. He's using ones instead of I's. So yeah. Night Cider. Requested Great Bill be used in this tech video. Now, what I'm going to be using this for is, instead of being a literal copy of Great Bill, the Earth normal monster that's common and worth several $100s, instead I'm going to be using this to represent Primite. So Primite Vanquish Soul. There's a couple of things to discuss here, right? So Primite Barrel is an Earth, so you can normal summon that, right? And then the Primite engine, kind of like the Vanquish Soul engine, is infinitely looping, and that it's constantly recycling itself, and it's really good in a grind game, and in simplified game states, it's even better. It gets you a free summon from deck with Great Bill off of, like, you activate Lordly Load, declare Great Bill, and then even if you draw the Great Bill, it's an Earth in hand for you to reveal for attributes. It's like, why would you play Primite when you can play so many other things, you know? But it's funny. I'm going to put Cupid. No, I think I'm actually going to put that above there. I think that there's opportunities for the Primite build to feel really good. You know, like Sue plus attributes, like if you get stopped on your turn or something, there's an opportunity for you to still play on their turn and have set up like Drill Beam and your follow-up of like the recyclable stuff. But again, if you're playing Primite, why play Vanquish Soul? Why not play Fiendsmith or Blue Eyes? You know, it's just better decks for you to play Primite with. So we'll go cute, but no. But yeah, Great Bill made the cameo, Night Cider. Well done. Okay, we're going to go over these two last. So I'm going to go into Mitsurugi next. I think the Mitsurugi engine belongs in a Can main deck. This is not meant to be Kusanagi. This is meant to be like an engine in and of itself. I think that the Mitsurugi engine is very good in Vanquish Soul. Not only are the monsters dark, but really they're very good by themselves. I mean, like you get one copy of Habakiri and you're bridging into Vanquish Soul totally fine, because Habakiri by itself, I believe, goes into Dempsey and Photon Lord. So you're getting a Nib negate and your Rosin Search without using a normal summon, which I think is really, really nice. And I think for me, the number one thing that's going to make me consider playing an engine in Vanquish Soul is if it bridges into Vanquish Soul in a comfortable manner. And Mitsurugi does, right? Now, this engine is going to eat hand traps for breakfast, so you can use the Mitsurugi cards to devour hand traps and then still also play Vanquish Soul. So like if you were to, let's say, open Rosin plus Habakiri, holy crap, you know, you're going to be going nuts. You're going to be playing your Mitsurugi cards, eating hand traps then, and then when they're out of hand traps, you just go, okay, normal summon Rosin. Or tribute over Murakumo to summon Holy Suit, trigger Murakumo effect, right? And then you have the opportunity to search prayers, which lets you get a dark in hand if you would like, so to like to, or uses interaction on their turn. I think that the Mitsurugi stuff can be really effective in Vanquish Soul. It's really strong, just as like an isolated engine by itself. Nothing to do with Vanquish Soul. Mitsurugi is just so good by itself that you can play this with Vanquish Soul and feel really good about it. And the difference between this and like the Primite build or the Horus build is that it is so much easier and more comfortable to bridge into Vanquish Soul with the Mitsurugi build than it is with those other builds, that I'm definitely considering it, right? I think a big thing for me, like I said, was I need to be able to comfortably bridge into Vanquish Soul with an engine in order to justify it, or that engine needs to be able to, you know what it is? The engine both needs to be able to bridge into Vanquish Soul and also needs to be good enough on its own. So like we look at the super heavy stuff, yes, that can bridge into Vanquish Soul, but it's not good enough on its own. Whereas like the Mitsurugi stuff definitely is. And that's where we're putting the Fiendsmith build next. I'm gonna put Fiendsmith, I'm gonna put this above the Rescue Ace Impulse. I might even do this. Where the Fiendsmith build to me is the best and correct build. And I'm absolutely biased in that because I've been playing it forever, and I invented the new combo line with Fiendsmith that gets you to, full combo. Like the new combo for the deck, it turns one copy of Engraver into 9 interruptions plus all 3 attributes in your hand off of one copy of Engraver. You have 4 other cards in your opening hand. It's ridiculous. That's better than what the Mitsurugi engine puts up. And now the Mitsurugi engine by itself, really self-contained, really strong, and it does enough. The Fiendsmith stuff gives you strengths that the Mitsurugi engine doesn't. It gives you the opportunity to play through Droll, make really good, strong, flexible bodies. So like, I use the Fiendsmith cards to make Light Dark Chaos Angel against a lot of decks that auto lose to that card. And I use it to make Wave High King Caesar against a lot of decks that auto lose to that card. So the opportunity to make both of those extra deck cards off of this engine, if I already open Vanquish Soul cards, is insane. This lets me get Nib protection. This lets me do my full combo to search Vanquish Soul cards if I need to. The biggest downside that I have with the Fiendsmith stuff is the bricks, right? So, unlike with the Mitsurugi, if I brick, I have darks in hand. These cards in hand as bricks are horrible. They're lights. But I think that the ceiling is just way too high. Actually, I'm going to put this up here. I'm going to put that up there. This might even be... Yeah, I think we're going to do this. I just don't know if like the Mitsu build is more justifiable than like a pure build that main decks the Charmies. I think that the Fiendsmith build is because, again, that ceiling is so high. And it does insulate for Droll in ways that the Mitsu build doesn't. I think that the Fiendsmith build is the best build of the deck. I might end up being proven wrong with that. Pure might end up being correct. Mitsu might end up being correct. I also think that part of the issue is like there's going to be a lot of people playing Vanquish Soul, and I don't know how many of them will be there playing the Fiendsmith build. So it's possible that like the representation that we see for the deck ends up not being the Fiendsmith build, because there might only be like 3 or 4 people there that are playing that deck, playing the Fiendsmith build, and like 30 to 50 to 100 people there playing the pure build. Same goes for Mitsu. right? I don't know how many people are going to be on these builds versus pure. So it's impossible to be like, oh yeah, the Fiendsmith build, the Mitsu build is going to be the correct build, because it's just not going to be a comparable test pool of representation. But maybe there will be. Hey, maybe I'll win the whole event with the deck and be like, haha, suckers. Knocking on wood for that one. Okay. The Unchained engine. So the Unchained engine must go along. So we're going to put this with build dependent. Because the Unchained stuff, I think, is only correct if you're playing the Fiendsmith build, because it's so necessary for the combo itself. What I will say is that there are so many times where I am in a simplified game state, and this Unchained engine ends up clutching out wins for me. So, like, there was a time where I really needed a fire in hand, and they just kept stopping me all the time. But I had Sue, I had a Dark, and so I ended up passing on just Yama, Unchained Soul Yama, the Link 2, that added Sharvara to hand, and I won the game because searching that Sharvara off of the Yama gave me the fire and the dark that I needed for Holy Sue to be able to go, okay, Sue, reveal Borger, summon, reveal fire and dark, summon Rosin search, add Caesar, column pop with the Rosin, Caesar bounce back to Sue, Sue pop. Like, it just spiraled into so much that being able to search the fire off of the Yama was such a blessing to me. I think that you only play the Unchained build if you're playing Fiendsmith, because otherwise you just don't have enough Fiends in deck to justify playing it. And I don't think that Sharvara is good enough by itself to just play in Vanquish Soul just because. Now, I like what Sharvara does for the deck. I like that it gives me the opportunity to dodge some interaction, like on the Mad Love if I really just need a search, or on some of the Fiendsmith stuff. I also like what this card does for me going first and, you know, going second. This isn't a bad discard off of Murakumo because it sets the trap. And so now I have the trap card to flip and then summon back Sharvara. So I just get a free body that way. And there's times where that ends up giving me enough to push for game for lethal. Yeah, I don't know. I think that Sharvara is a great fit in Vanquish Soul as a whole. I just wish there were more ways for Vanquish Soul to be able to add this card to hand off of Yama, and the Fiendsmith cards enable that. So the reason why I'm not saying should main deck for this is because I do think that Pure and Mitsu are both totally viable builds of the deck. And so I don't think that you must play the Fiendsmith build. The same way that I think that you probably must play the Canine build, and you should absolutely main deck these cards. I think people that are main decking DD Crow over the Bystials are just flat wrong. I think they're just flat wrong. I think you either play both or you play just the Bystials. Like, I get that DD Crow hits more cards, but like 2 Bystials does as much damage to Mitsurugi as 1 DD Crow on the ritual spell does. And they're also playing other ritual spells. So like a single copy of Prayers to grab Mirror or Pre-Prep to grab Mirror makes the DD Crow suddenly feel really bad. Whereas the Bystials will still feel good because at least you got the bodies out of them and they represent multiple interactions by themselves. Okay. Last thing that I wanted to talk about was the Vanquish Soul cards themselves. So there are spells and traps that are being decided on. I probably should have thrown Pantera into here as well, just because I know that Pantera is kind of a contentious issue right now as well. But I didn't. I think Pantera is really your opinion. I'm still going to play her. But here are the other Vanquish Soul spells and traps. So we're definitely playing Snow Devil. We're definitely playing Start. The question becomes, do we play the other trap cards and spell cards? I think the Calamity Caesar is not even worth considering, but I would put it above everything that's down here. I think the Calamity Caesar is okay. It does burn damage. It's targeting protection, whatever, right? But like, there's just not enough. There's just not enough in the game right now that makes Calamity Caesar better. Not every single deck targets, and a lot of those effects ends up being like blanket effects or board nuke styles that don't target. I think that the Trinity Burst is cute, but no. I know that there's a guy that played it and was like, oh, this card's great. Apparently, I haven't looked into it too much myself, but I don't want to like make unsubstantiated claims against somebody who won playing this card, but apparently he like didn't know what some of the cards did, or like he wasn't, you know, using cards correctly. I think the brief conversation that I read in the Vanquish Soul Discord about him was that he was cheating, even if it was unintentional. So I don't want to like give weight to that by saying like, oh my god, this card's nuts, right? I think that this card can be powerful in the sense that it can bounce cards back to hand. I think if you want to play multiple traps, you could play this and 1 Snow Devil. You could just play 2 Snow Devil. This also summons from hand, just like Snow Devil does. This non-targeting bounces, though, rather than blanket board nukes. And maybe that comes up. But I just think that the board nuke and the protection, like Snow Devil just does so much for you that what's the point of playing this card? You might as well just play 2 Snow Devil if you have to play 2 trap cards, right? Like unless you're worried about like destruction effects mattering. And maybe this is better in the mirror match than Snow Devil is. But like, I think you'd rather just play Snow Devil. Okay, continue. I think continue is build dependent. I'm going to put this above thrust. I think that it's okay to play this card, especially if you're playing a more pile build of the deck, like if you're playing the Mitsurugi build or the Fiendsmith build. I think that continue is okay. I like continue as a follow-up. I also like as a nib insolent, so like you can search it off of Xiaolong. That way, if you get nibbed, you can at least have a body on board to keep playing with. Like you can just summon back the Xiaolong in end phase, and then in their main phase, search Su, and then you're good to go there. I think that the deck doesn't need to play into Nib right now, though, and so that's not really something that you have to be searching much. It's nice to search off of Mad Love on their turn, but like, I don't know. I used to swear by playing continue. I used to say that you must play continue, and I no longer feel that way about the card, just because of where the deck's at right now, the power ceiling on the deck, and how much better of a search the field spell is. I think Dust Devil is worth a look. I haven't given this card a look yet. I'll probably bring this to locals with me and give it a try in the side deck. If I were to play it, it would be here. It'd probably be here or here. Maybe I'm just not being generous. Maybe it should be here. I'm gonna put it here. I think Dust Devil is worth a look. Now, granted, some people might already have been playing that card. I have not, so I'm gonna put it in worth a look. I got to test with it. I got to see how it feels. I do like what it sort of represents, and it can feel really good into the mirror match. And I think that post Justice Hunters, this card actually goes up. This card probably goes either into can main deck or should side deck and Justice Hunters, just because of what the card represents. Like the non-targeting book, it's a searchable book of Eclipse, and in really simplified game states, this card can be really effective. I just think that, you know, there are better cards to be playing, and most of the time you'd rather have a hand trap that is the correct attribute, or just other cards in general. Snow Devil is always going to be better than this card. Now it's nice into the mirror match, but maybe it's here. I'm going to put it in worth a look just because I haven't given it a look yet. Yeah, I think we're going to end that. Okay. This is the tier list for Vanquish Soul tech cards for the tier. This is like 81. I think this is a lot of cards. I covered a lot of cards here and engines. So hopefully you all enjoyed that. If you disagree with me on some things or agree with me on some things, throw comments into the comments section on this. I'd love to discuss and debate. Maybe I'm wrong about something and I'm just completely missing it. You know, maybe your experience with the card has been different from what I'm listing. Yeah. So very nice. Brendan out.